Hey, welcome everyone to Hope for Our Times for Sunday night, 4 o'clock out here on the west coast of the United States of America. I want to thank all of you who are watching all around the world. I know we have viewers every week. They're coming from Canada, the UK, all over Europe, South Africa. A lot of people have been emailing me from South Africa, Australia. And we know Australia is going through some real rough things right now. Not to mention, I know there's other parts of the world too, but I'm looking at what's coming out of Australia. And man, it is just unbelievable the things that are taking place. Hey, listen, quick reminder before we get going is we have our prophecy conference with Billy Crone, Brandon Holthouse, and myself on September 26th. It's just a few weeks away. It's on a Sunday. It's going to be all day Sunday. Go to hopeforourtimes.com to get information. The conference is free. It'll start at 8:30 in the morning. And then it's going to be pretty much going all day. There will even be a barbecue in the afternoon. We will have it online. It looks like we're finally going to have our own server. So any of the content that might have been challenged before or been censored before, we don't have to worry about that. So it's going to be a fantastic conference. And look forward to being with you guys, whether in person or online. And also one more, just a quick reminder. I want to encourage you and even ask you to like and share this video. Even right now, it's live. Share it with your friends. Tell them to tune in. Whatever it may be, the more likes, the more shares that we have, the more it helps YouTube to be able to push these videos out there. Really appreciate your help in that. And also, if you haven't done so yet, I want to ask you to please subscribe to this YouTube channel. In fact, by the way, it's free to do all those things. Free to like, free to share, and free to subscribe. And this is a message that I am pretty confident that you're going to be wishing that everybody you knew would watch. Well, let's get going. So I've titled this message, It's Worse Than We Thought. So I'm just going to go through some news. This first part of the news is a little bit old, but never old because of the days that we live in. It's actually only a couple of weeks back, but we're going to go from here, and then I'm going to give you 4 things that we really need to consider right now. So first thing, just check this out in the news. A while back, digital health passports, Trojan horse for a cashless society. I say, personally, absolutely that is coming. Then there's this coming out of Australia. Australia authorities can now legally change citizens' social media posts. Can you say, Big Brother? When you look at that, you're thinking, you got to be kidding me. I can post something on social media and they can change it? They can legally change it. Listen, this is about controlling the narrative. Then there's this. House of Lords asked why Brits are forced to take PCR COVID tests on returning to the UK, but illegal migrants aren't. Hey, that's a great question. We have that question here in America also. Why is it that people can come illegally across the border of the United States, no tests, in fact, be placed all over the country, but if you're here in the country, you got to be tested? Listen, these are just common sense questions. And a lot of people aren't even asking them. But why aren't people asking these questions? That doesn't make any sense to me. We should be asking. It should cause anybody to say, doesn't pass the smell test. There's something wrong here. Then there's this. I will not submit 140,000 French citizens protest against vaccine passport. Now, I want you to think of that. This is happening in France. We're watching these things that are happening all over the world. But I was watching some people in France, part of their protest is they're not able to go to this restaurant, not able to shop here, not able to go over there. And what they did is they just, in fact, I'm sure some people from France are watching this right now. What they did is they just got their tables and chairs out and they gave themselves a picnic. Listen, you're not allowed to buy or sell or go into this place. Friends, we live in an interesting time, don't we? Here's another article. This is out of Zero Hedge. Medical, look at this. Medical drones, deployed over Italian beaches, search for feverish people. Look at that again. Medical drones deployed over Italian beaches, search for feverish people. You look at that and you go, what kind of world is it that we live in? We live in a world that is rapidly being taken into the last days. Everything is shifting. Everything has accelerated. What kind of world is it? It's this kind of world. We're a world where Big Brother is watching you. Listen, there's a lot of other things I wish I could share with you right now. I was watching a video earlier that came out of France, and it was a lady who was shopping. She did not have her pass. She was shopping in a mall. And you saw the police rush in. You actually saw them beat her with sticks and arrest her because she didn't have a pass. Folks, we live in times that are unprecedented. I don't care what anybody wants to argue with me about that. People say, oh, we've been through this before. No, this globe has never been through this before. We are going into uncharted territories. However, we have the Bible that guides us, the Bible that leads us, the Bible that tells us the direction that everything is going to go. I'm just going to read this one quick passage to you from Revelation chapter 13. And in fact, never mind. I'm going to read from Revelation chapter 6. Now, I'm going to read from Revelation chapter 13. I want you to consider this. You have the Antichrist, and you have the false prophet. And then there's this passage, read it many times before. The false prophet, what's he do? He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. All right, so you look at this. We look at these things that are going on. We start to put things into a context, and we can see the direction that everything is going. Listen, Big Brother is watching. There's a whole lot of things that are transpiring, but I would say things are much worse than we thought. It is unbelievable to watch what is taking place. Now, keep this in mind. I used this last week. I'll show you again. Keep this in mind before we go through the rest of this. Only 4 main things I want to bring up. At the very end, I'm going to take your live questions, but consider this. Remember this. The one who reads a newspaper knows what's happening in the world, or at least we know the spin of what's happening in the world. But the one who reads the Bible knows why. So 4 things. First one is this. You ready? It's the rise of the EU as America implodes. The rise of EU as America implodes. First article out of the Jerusalem Post. Why were Israel and the U.S. not invited to the Baghdad conference? Listen, we are watching the implosion of America. At the same time, we're watching the rise of the EU through the ashes. Consider this, the Baghdad conference, which was held last Saturday, was unusual in terms of both venue and participants. The venue was Baghdad. The host was Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi, and participants included the leaders of France, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, and 4 ministers of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran, and Turkey. The event sought to accomplish 2 goals. One, more limited, was to bolster Iraq's stability. The other, broader, was to strengthen regional stability. Its timing at the height of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan was surely no coincidence. It reflected the growing understanding by the states of the region that they can no longer rely on U.S. involvement and must now fend for themselves. The convening of the conference points to several important developments in the Middle East. The first relates to the host, Iraq, which is positioning itself as a regional mediator. I'm going to stop here, but I want you to think of this with Iraq. Think of Babylon. Listen, the Bible teaches, I believe the Bible teaches, that Babylon is going to rise up in the last days. Why is Iraq suddenly becoming the headquarters of all these things? Listen, we are being fast-tracked to the last days. Hold on one second. Remember a few weeks ago when it got really hot in here? I have a feeling my air conditioner just shut off. And no, it should still be going. Man, I don't know why I'm feeling so, oh no, I did something wrong. Hold on, folks. Okay, there, air's coming back on. It gets so hot in here. It's 110 outside, and it's about 109 in here, it feels like. But you look at this. Why was the U.S. not invited to that? We are watching the rise of the EU. We are watching the implosion of America. Consider this when you think of the implosion of America. I will show you one reason why we are watching the implosion of America. It's because of the moral decay that we have here. Look at this next article. Abortion lobby argues Texas law will flood states with Down syndrome children. Okay, you heard about the heartbeat law in Texas saying no abortions. heartbeat, no abortions, right? So the abortion lobby argues Texas law will flood states with Down syndrome children. Listen to this. Down syndrome was trending on Twitter this week alongside abortion after Supreme Court ruled not to block the Texas Heartbeat Act, as members of the abortion lobby suggested abortion is necessary to eliminate Down syndrome. Folks, this is just bad. A heavily cited thread came from Newsweek contributor Richard Hanania, who proposed that banning post-heartbeat abortions could overrun red states with children with Down syndrome and other disabilities. Did you catch that? To quote him, you can't screen for Down syndrome before about 10 weeks, and something like 80% of Down syndrome fetuses are aborted. If red states ban abortion, we could see a world where they have 5 times as many children with Down syndrome and similar numbers for other disabilities. And this argument is just so evil. Could be outliers in the whole developed world, he said in a separate tweet. There are already negative stereotypes of Americans in these states. One can imagine it getting much more extreme. What if they also ban genetic engineering and embryo selection while other places go ahead? So you start listening to this argument, it's just so corrupt and so evil. But one of those, now listen to this, one of those who took issue with protesting the Supreme Court's decision because more children with Down syndrome would be born was Princeton University professor Robert George, who reminded his followers of similar arguments used by the Third Reich. Why is Down syndrome trending on Twitter? He said, because some people are arguing we need permissive abortion laws so we can screen for people with Down syndrome and kill them in utero. So wrong. No member of the human family is inherently superior or inferior to any other in basic dignity. Sometimes it's worth remembering, now listen to this, that what became known as the Holocaust did not begin with the murder of Jews or Slavs or Romani. It began with the killing of the disabled and cognitively impaired. They were regarded as useless eaters. The ideology that held Down syndrome people and others be lives unworthy of life did not originate with the Nazis. It predated their rise. Its architects were sophisticated, urban, progressive people like legal scholar Carl Binding and medical specialist Alfred Hoke, claiming that we are eliminating Down syndrome by killing people with Down syndrome so long as we catch them early enough. It's like claiming that we are eliminating poverty by killing poor people. It's barbaric, and the very thought of it should fill us with revulsion. Another to protest this trend was Dr. Samuel Gregg of Action Institute, who made similar comparisons. Well, one thing that Twitter has revealed today is that there are an awful lot of oh-so-sophisticated people out there who believe that people with Down syndrome are, as Dr. Mengele from Nazi Germany and other like-minded people said, life unworthy of life. In response to negative responses, now listen to this. In response to the negative responses to his thread, the writer from Newsweek, the Newsweek contributor, Hanania, dug in his heels. Now listen to what he says. This is an objective observation about the world, and it's triggering many people to just point out the actual implications of their beliefs. Again, this is his own words. This is an objective observation about the world. Wow, it is a very objective observation about the world. The depravity of man, and you look at this going on in America, and you're thinking how far we have fallen. We are watching the implosion of America. Just consider some of the things that we have seen take place just as of late. Taliban holding 6 planes loaded with Americans and translators. This is news that just came out today or yesterday. 6 planes full of people. Well, I thought we were told by the presidential administration that we got all the Americans out. No, we're being lied to. We are not being told the truth. Taliban militants execute 8-month pregnant police officer in front of her husband and children in her own home. Our government has been telling us, they've been lying to us and telling us that the Taliban is mostly peaceful, like peaceful protesters? I mean, you got to be kidding me. This is absolutely wicked, the things that they are doing. Absolutely wicked. So what's happening as America is imploding and disappearing and pulling out? We're seeing all kinds of wars and rumors of wars. Look at this. Japan and Taiwan to discuss China aggression amid invasion threats. You have the rise of China. I talked about this last week, also. Iran confirms it has accelerated production of highly enriched uranium. And then also talked about this. With Afghan collapse, Moscow takes charge in Central Asia. Well, what do we expect? That's exactly what's happening. So now what we're watching is America is imploding. America is collapsing. America is crumbling from its moral decay. That's what's going on. And in that, terrible decisions are being made by our leaders. Romans chapter 1 tells us, God says, I will give them over to debased mind. When you want to commit these sins, I'll give you over to debased mind. In other words, not just that perverted mind that just does all sorts of things, but a mind that cannot make a decision in its own best interest. In other words, the decisions that you'll make will be to your own destruction, and you'll think it's good. So we see that happening when you look at what's going on in Afghanistan. What's happening then? We see Russia is saying, hey, we're going to take control of the Mideast. What do we have? We have Russia and Saudi Arabia, Russia and UAE, Russia and the Jordanians, right? So we see all this going on. Russia says, we're the kings. We're going to be the ones to control that entire region. Talk about a setup for Ezekiel chapter 38. You better believe it is. What else do we have? This is out of Debka. 2 missiles exploding off Israel's coast marked Syria's response to alleged IDF air raid. Folks, Israel is being abandoned. I don't care what anybody tells me. Israel is being abandoned by the United States of America. I haven't heard anything official yet, but if you can't see that, it is bad. But at the same time, we're watching things. We are being fast-paced, accelerated into the last days. But then, look at this. European Union to engage and coordinate with the Taliban, short of political recognition. What? Short of political recognition, we're going to engage with them. We're going to work with them. It was Jen Psaki from the Biden spokesperson last week who said, well, we're just going to see what the Taliban wants their position to be on the international stage. You've got to be kidding me. The Taliban? But this is what we're dealing with. So what do we see? We see Putin doing what we'd expect Putin to do according to Ezekiel chapter 38. He's dominating, he's controlling everything. People like me have been saying for decades that the end of America as we know it must come. America's not going to be this great nation. It can't be in order to fulfill Bible prophecy. We are watching that. So the rise of Russia over in the Mideast coming, Ezekiel 38. The demise of America, the collapse of America, absolutely. You want to know what else is happening? Check this out. Here it is. The rise of the EU. That was my first point. We have the rise of the EU and the American implosion. Look at this article. EU defense minister considers rapid reaction force after the fall of Afghanistan. Listen to this. I'm only going to read a short portion of this. The U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan made Brussels think of a European army. EU foreign policy chief, there is an urgent need for a European defense force. We look forward to presenting the EU defense plan in the coming months, and the events in Afghanistan have accelerated this. Other EU diplomats and senior officials have called on member states, get this, to set up a rapid deployment defense force, get this, capable of intervening around the world, saying the Afghan crisis could be a chance to end passivity for a European military. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. What do we have? The implosion of America, the collapse of America, the rise of Russia over in the Mideast, and the domination of Russia over in the Mideast with Putin. And at the same time, Europe is saying, what do we need? We need a military. And they call it here a rapid deployment defense force capable of intervening around the world. You can't make this stuff up. Look at how fast everything is happening. I look at this one thing alone. It was only a few weeks ago, before Afghanistan, I had somebody argue with me online, and they were saying, hey, listen, the United States isn't going anywhere. We have the biggest, most powerful military in the world. It's not going anywhere. So Antichrist is going to come out of the United States. He's going to be controlling the United States military. And I said, that's not what the Bible teaches, so it's not going to go that way. And this guy got so mad at me. But I look at it, what do? A couple days later, we have the Afghanistan debacle, that just horrific thing that's taking place. What does the U.S. military do? We have Navy boats that are worn out. Just absolutely a disaster. We have China with their boats. We have Russia doing all the things that they're doing. We look at what's happening with America. We look at the planes that we have and the planes that we don't have. Saudi Arabia is now working with Russia for their military equipment. They don't trust the U.S. Nobody trusts the U.S. anymore. What else happens with America and their military? Over in Afghanistan, they give away all of their weapons to the Taliban, to a terrorist organization. I am telling you, folks, we are watching the beginning of the fulfillment of this rise of the EU, the rise of the EU army, the Antichrist is going to be overseeing, rapid deployment defense force to police the entire world. That's what they're saying they're going to do. Folks, this is biblical. You start looking at this and you go, wow, you can't make this stuff up. So that's number one. Number two, you ready? Here it is. Number two, the brainwashing is almost complete. I talked a little bit about the brainwashing with James Cadiz on Friday, but we're going to go into it a little bit more here because you got to see this. The brainwashing is almost complete. Consider this. This is from a couple of weeks ago. Fauci dismisses freedom and call for vaccine mandates. The time has come. Enough is enough. So no more freedom, right? So we got this problem going on. No more freedom. It's amazing how many people say, yeah, this is a really good idea. Arnold Schwarzenegger said, yeah, I love this idea. All right, give up your freedoms. And then there's this out of the Blaze media. We've rejected reason and science for lies. Tough questions are no longer allowed. And the majority, it seems like the majority of people are going along with this and thinking, well, this is just great. This just makes absolute sense. Okay, I'm going to show you something here in a second. I'm going to show you a video here in just a second. But before we go there, let me give you this definition for what brainwash is, okay? This is out of the Cambridge Dictionary. Here it is, the definition for brainwash. To make someone believe something by repeatedly telling him or her that it is true and preventing any other information from reaching him or her. Okay, let me do that again. You ready? Think about this again. Here it is. To make this brainwash, to make someone believe something by repeatedly telling him or her that it's true, yes, we hear that, and preventing any other information from reaching him or her. Folks, you can't, again, you can't make this stuff up. You look at what's happened globally. Okay, I'm going to show you a video. It's an interview with the Soviet defector Yuri Bezmenov from 1984. And in it, this is what he's going to talk about. Talk about how do you change a nation? How do you brainwash a nation? He says it's a slow process, but this is how you do it. He said there are 4 steps to brainwashing a nation. You demoralize, you destabilize, you bring in a crisis, and then normalization. You demoralize, he'll say it here, you'll hear it in just a minute. He said normally it takes about 15 to 20 years because you start with a generation in school, get through about 20 years, you've demoralized that entire generation. And then you've got the next one because these become moms and dads. He said in 1984, we're well past the 15 to 20 year set there on the demoralize. Then you destabilize economy, defense, eliminate free market and so forth. Then you bring in a crisis. He says crisis only takes 6 weeks, and then it's normalization. Okay, so you ready? I'm going to show you this video. It was about what, Kevin, about 8 minutes long? 6 minutes. Okay, this video is about 6 minutes long. I'll be right back, but pay attention. Pay attention. Again, this was 1984. Put it into the context of where we are now, and I'll be back here in 6 minutes.
Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was the, and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate 1 generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world, that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster.
Wow. I mean, you look at that, and you again, I'm looking at all these things, you can't make this stuff up. That was 1984. So what do? You demoralize. That's happened. Then you destabilize. You wonder why we've seen all this civil unrest and all these riots that don't make any sense, why you're accused of being a racist when you're not, or whatever it is. And we see all these different things that are going on. We see the radical places regarding one group pitted against another group in the media, in the schools, all over the place. And then what do we have? Even as he says, then you bring in the crisis. He says the crisis only takes 6 weeks. I go back to the destabilize. You bring in the economic problems, defense problems, eliminate the free market. You have big government promise to take care of all these things. Man, we're watching. Then you bring in the crisis. What happens with the crisis? The people cry out, we want to go back to normal. We want to go back to normal. Listen, we've been going through this crisis globally, and I believe we're probably going to be going through a bigger one. I've talked before about this. Many of you have probably heard about it, Cyber Polygon. It's the projected cyber attack that's going to happen. That's going to make things way worse than the current lockdowns that we've had. What are we going to have? A way worse global crisis. So you start looking at these things. What do you have? People crying out, we just want to go back to, we're already here, just want to go back to normal. Bring in normalization. What did he say? He talked about it in one of the videos that he did. He talked about it, he said, this is what the Soviet Union did in Czechoslovakia. He said, this is what happened in 1968. You have all of these things that demoralize, destabilize the crisis, and then the Soviet Union comes in with their tanks, and they say, now we have normalized Czechoslovakia. Come in with the tanks. Baby, I'm looking at everything thinking, look at where we are. What have we gone through in this brainwashing process? We've been locked down. People have been locked down in our homes. You're humiliated. We were told, when you're locked, just think of the lockdowns. Lockdown in homes. Many people still are, just out of fear. But all you hear is the news. Whatever the news is that you're given all the time, it's 24/7, it's on, it's one narrative, one voice. Goes back to the definition of brainwashing. You eliminate all other voices, and you just tell them that this is true, even if you know that it is a lie. Folks, this is what we have been up against. This is what's going on. You can't make this stuff up. We're watching it not just here in America, we're watching it globally. Remember this, just 2 more things. The next 2 are going to be much quicker. But remember this, I mentioned it in the very beginning. The one who reads a newspaper knows what's happening in the world. The one who reads the Bible knows why. Again, it's the one who reads the newspaper knows what's happening in the world. The one who reads the Bible knows why. Okay, just 2 more things. These next 2 are going to be much quicker, and then I'm going to get to your questions. But number 3 is it's church against the church. Church against the church. We're watching this happen in Nazi Germany, and it's happening worldwide right now. People, even pastors, don't want to stick up for what the truth is. I mentioned this at my church this morning. What happened with Nazi Germany is you had like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and others who were part of the resistance, the pastors that were part of the resistance. At one point, I believe the peak of the resistance with the churches was 7,000 pastors. I don't know how it ended. I don't know as people came and went, but that sounds like a lot of churches and a lot of pastors that were part of the resistance. Well, there were 40,000 pastors, 40,000 churches that just went along with Nazi Germany, just went along with the plans of Hitler. They didn't want to upset the apple cart. They wanted everything to be just fine. So it was just like, hey, let's not say anything. Let's not tell the truth. Let's just get along. Listen, you're part of the problem. Remember, Nazi Germany, it was for your safety. Does that sound familiar? This is all for your safety. We have your best interest. So the pastors are teaching the people that in Nazi Germany, while the Jews are being hauled off to be thrown to Auschwitz and to the other death camps. The pastors were complicit in this, saying just ignore it. It's good. It's for the better of everybody that's out there. You may have read some of the biographies or some of the testimonies. I've read some. One in particular I was reminded of earlier today, this morning as a matter of fact, I was reminded of this, that at one of the churches that was near where the railroad tracks were that brought the Jews by cattle car to go to one of the death camps, as they heard the trains coming, the people in the congregation would sing louder and louder and louder. You want to know why? Because they didn't want to hear the screams of the Jews as they were being taken by cattle car to the death camp. So they would sing the praise songs to God louder and louder to drown out their ears to not listen. I mean, is this where we are now in America? No, but I'm telling you, folks, history repeats itself, and I'm watching what's happening in the churches. Listen, I've read biographies where the men who of the concentration camps, they would go to church on Sunday morning, they would come back to the death camp, they'd be singing Amazing Grace as they're hauling off Jews to be slaughtered. Well, listen, we're not there yet. Well, some areas are, but we're not there yet. But listen, we are going that way. History repeats itself, and we need to look at the warnings. Look at this article. This is on 30 Pieces of Silver website. Interesting, isn't it? That's what Judas betrayed Jesus for. But look at this article titled, "The Globalist Evangelical Ed Stetzer Informing Council on Foreign Relations Against Christians." Let me read just a little bit of this to you. Ed Stetzer is no stranger to working with globalists. In May of 21, he joined the Council on Foreign Relations to deal with conspiracy theories in the church. By the way, the CFR, or Council on Foreign Relations, is it's this globalist group to bring about a globalist agenda, the New World Order. That's what it's about. Ed Stetzer is everywhere a Christian should not be, writes this author, and working with organizations who have nothing to do with Christian mission. In fact, many organizations, such as the Council on Foreign Relations, with whom he joined to discuss, get this, faith communities and disinformation, are decidedly globalist and anti-Christian. So why does Ed Stetzer use his influence to aid such organizations and accuse Christians of conspiracy theories and disinformation? What topics of conversation do the accusations cover? And who pays Ed to continue to represent us in Christian media while misrepresenting us as conspiracy nuts to the enemies of the cross? Conspiracy nuts as to the enemies of the cross, saying these people want to kill us. And he's representing us as being nuts. This article goes on and says just a few things. Ed, in his own words, speaks on topics like Muslims have the same problem. Evangelicals are suspicious of the media. Evangelicals buy into QAnon's Great Awakening. Listen, I don't buy into QAnon's Great Awakening, but what's happening is you get lumped into this whole thing. Stetzer said, part of his talk, evangelicalism in particular, and the reality is evangelicals have a problem. Now, it's not just an evangelical religious tradition, but that they have been disproportionately impacted in and around issues of conspiracy theories. So I'll be talking about this. I am at a gathering of religious leaders right now who asked me to address this issue. So I actually now do conferences and webinars helping denominations and religious leaders to walk through and help their communities engage some of these conspiracies and conspiracy issues. Listen, I'm looking at this. Basically, what I gather is if you teach that the Bible is true, that there really is a global agenda, that we are being fast forward to the last days, that the book of Revelation is true, the prophecies of Paul are true, the prophecies of Jesus are true, regarding his second coming. Where Jesus, listen to the words of Jesus. Listen to what Jesus said. Jesus was asked, what's the sign of your coming in the end of the age? And then Jesus began to tell him. And this is what he said. Many will take heed that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not here yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. You look at that. These are the beginning of sorrows. In other words, these things will increase like birth pains upon a pregnant woman as you get closer and closer to the end. And then you have the book of Revelation. You have the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And you start looking at that and you go, well, wait a minute, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the rider on the white horse, what do you have? A man or a group, some say is Antichrist, who go about the world with a global agenda. Hey, let's just all get along. Let's bring peace to the whole world. Then you have the rider on the red horse, which is massive war that breaks out. What are we watching right now? Wars and rumors of wars. Again, look at what's going on with China and Russia and Iran and Afghanistan. The EU now saying we're going to be this massive military. We're going to build that. Can't make this stuff up. And then what do you have after that? After this massive war breaks out, what do you have? You have the rider on the black horse, economic catastrophe and famine that I believe is very evident according to how the Bible is set up. I believe it's quite clear. These are man-made events, man-made war, man-made economic catastrophe that's global. By the way, says don't harm the oil or the wine, a day's wage for a loaf of bread. The third horseman, the black horse, don't harm the oil or the wine. In other words, the elite at the top are going to be doing just fine. Everybody else is going to be devastated. Everybody else is going to be poor. Listen, that's Marxism. You start looking at this. What that video just showed you, what do? You demoralize, destabilize, bring in the crisis, the normalization. What's normalization? Everything is collapsed, and we look up to Big Brother and say, feed me, feed me. The elite aren't going to be harmed. And then you have the rider on the pale horse. What's that? Death by famine, death by war, death by pestilences. Interesting, isn't it? Man-made things. So look at this, and you think, so we have a Christian leader that's saying, you guys proclaim this stuff. It's a problem within Christianity. These guys are conspiracy nuts. Nothing to see here, folks. Label these people who believe in the Bible and Bible prophecy as nuts. Let's move on. Very last thing is climate laws that are coming. World Economic Forum has their Global Water Initiative. I'm sure you've heard about this. I've talked about it briefly before. But listen, we're going to have water wars. I'm going to get to that in just a second. And they're coming really fast. In some areas, you already experience them. We always have them here in California. But in some areas, you experience them. You understand what it is. But they're going to be global. They're going to be worldwide. And it's going to be used to manipulate the masses. So we have the World Economic Forum with their Global Water Initiative. By the way, this is the same group that is very excited about the lockdowns we've been going through because they get to control the world and get it back to a place of normalization as they deem. Bring in the crisis and then bring in the normalization. That's World Economic Forum. What do you have? We have this global water problem. Guess what? Everybody's going to have to submit, except for the people at the top. They will never submit. By the way, with climate change, why do you think we're being preached at all the time about global warming and the like, and we're told that the ice caps are all melting, the seas are going to overrun the boundaries? By the way, God says, I set the boundaries, ain't going to happen. Did you know that? That's what the Bible says in the Old Testament. It ain't going to happen. The boundaries aren't, God sets them. But they say they're going to, all the ice is going to melt and everything's going to be flooded because of global warming and your irresponsibility and too many cows out there that literally, it's the cow farts that are causing this. That's literally what they tell us. And it's your fault for eating meat. So this is what they tell us, right? So let's think about it. Why is it that these same people, the elite ones that won't be hurt with the third horse of the apocalypse, why is it these same people, they buy beachfront property if they're suddenly going to get overrun with water? Because they know it's a lie. We've been brainwashed. You tell somebody a lie, you tell them it's the truth, you don't let them hear anything else. Folks, that's what's happening right now, even with this. Listen, there's always droughts, there's always famines, there's always heat waves, there's always water shortages, there's always climactic events. These things are true. We understand that, right? So with that, though, when you have these things that take place, these weather events that take place that are extreme, there's enough truth to be able to cause the people to be afraid and say this is the worst ever. Hence, we have viruses and so forth. You use them, there's enough truth. I know people that have died from this. There's enough truth in it to manipulate the masses with fear. So, hence we see these things. What else do we have? This is New York officials, Hochul and Schumer, I think I pronounced his name right, and de Blasio, Hurricane Ida press conference transcript. What does Schumer say? Schumer says, hey, guess what, folks? This is what we need to do. Schumer says we need to seize this opportunity to end the climate change problem. In other words, we need to control the masses and bring in all kinds of laws. And then we are constantly hearing this. I've talked about it. I beat this drum. The shortages, this zero hedge, the shortages are going to get worse later this year as global supply chains increasingly falter. Listen, it's going to happen, but I believe, folks, these things are intentional. I don't believe they have to be. I believe these problems could be fixed, but we have leaders that don't want to fix them because it's very convenient with the crisis. Consider this in this article titled Drought, Famine, and the word I'm not allowed to say equals depopulation. Renowned radio host, filmmaker, and book author Steve Quayle says America is under attack from many sides. One is in our face, and many do not realize how dire the situation is in the western U.S. Quayle says the so-called 1,200-year mega drought is being manufactured with geoengineering. The globalists are cutting off the water. That means cutting food supplies. He explains, we have got record low water levels that are being broken. We have absolute power issues coming up. I'm trying to tell people this, the days of taking water for granted are over. The water shortage and extreme drought is all fitting into the Great Reset. He who controls the headwaters controls life. This is why you are going to begin to see water wars. We are dealing with global shortages of water, and not just in the U.S. The U.S. is in the most pronounced drought. This issue is seen globally, and I believe part of the Great Reset. It's about trying to get people controlled down to 1,500 calories a day. Listen, we hear about not eating beef. You're going to hear a lot more about that in the months ahead. Isn't it interesting? The UN eats filet mignon, and they are telling you and me to get used to eating insect protein. The idea is controlling the food. If you control food, you control life. I'm being told that when the water crisis gets acute enough on the West Coast, California, Washington, and Nevada will have border lockdowns. What is a border lockdown? Any state that has water does not want to be rushed with 20 or 40 million people, and that's what they are talking about. Wow. The big reservoirs in the western U.S. are down more than 60%. And there's no way to fill them back up quickly. It's not just the USA conducting weather warfare. It's not just the U.S. Air Force. The Russians are doing it, the Chinese are doing it, and so forth. Quayle says the mega drought will all end up as a food shortage or worse. Drought them out or starve them out. Drought equals famine. We are going to have the biggest mass migration out of the western U.S. that we have ever seen. Listen, there's more to it than that. But I look at this and go, I don't know if it's intentionally manipulated, whether I've looked at that. People send me things all the time. I've been looking at that for a long time. But I do know this, it's intentionally manipulated people. I can tell you that because here in California, there hasn't been a new dam that's been built by the state of California since 1959. We've had 5 new dams. 3 were local, two or three were local, and 2 or 3 were feds. But the population of California has doubled since 1959. State of California isn't putting money there. We dump water out of dams into the 75% of the water in some of the dams is dumped into the Pacific Ocean in order to protect some fish while the farms are going into a drought. The farms that feed the rest of the country and much of the world. Listen, folks, these problems are solvable. They're real, but what's happening is it's the management of things. That's where I have a problem with a lot of what I see going on. There's real things that happen. It's the management that is manipulating these things to the point where he even says in that article, and then a video that follows it, by the way, I'm not going to show it tonight, that you've got this mega famine that's coming. Listen, folks, this all fits with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. All of it does. We are being set up. Everything is going this direction. So what do we do when we look at all of these things? We've got to remember, We have the hope of the Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus himself said in Luke chapter 21, when you see these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads because your redemption draws near. Think of this. People ask me all the time, well, that's a passage where Jesus said that. That is about his second coming, not the rapture. You are correct. I say this almost every week. That is about the second coming of Christ. So if we are seeing everything begin to happen right now, we're watching the beginning stages, knowing they're going to be fulfilled in the tribulation period, how soon it's going to be before we're caught up to meet the Lord in the air. Listen, we need to be ready. Jesus says, look up, lift up your heads. Look up. We're told to watch and be ready. Lift up your heads. That means with expectant joy. Although we see all these things taking place, listen, these are signs that point to Jesus calling us home. It's about ready to be over. We are moving into, all of us are moving into, we're all in this, the whole world is being fast forwarded into the last days. Israel's being isolated. We have the rise of Russia in the Mideast. We have the rise of the EU, the demise of America. We have the threat of famine, the threat of drought. We have the climate wars that are coming. We have the brainwashing that has already been taking place. Folks, we're almost there. We're about ready to see the Lord. Listen, I'm going to take some questions right now. So here's the story. Here's the story, Morning Glory. We're somewhere out there this morning. This is what I need you to do if you want to send in your questions. Now's the time to do it, but you must put the word question in all caps or I'm going to miss it. So you ready? Okay, go ahead and send in your questions and we'll get going. I have one here that came into me just a little bit ago. As soon as I can read them, I will start reading them. Let me see. So I'm going to start with this question first of all. This is from Mark. He says, Revelation chapter 7. Tells of the sealing of the 144,000, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Jacob. Do we know where each of these tribes are today, very specifically? Obviously, those tribes will become known by the time of the sealing to prove God's sovereignty in prophecy. So do we know where those tribes are today? Not that I know of. I'm sure people like to say, well, this tribe's here, or this tribe's there, or that tribe's there. I don't know about that. All I know is God is going to bring them. Here's a question from Ryan. Kevin, can you go back just a little bit? Question from Ryan. There it is. Because we know the Bible, are Christians the only ones that see this global agenda for what is pure evil? Listen, that is a great question, Ryan. And I'm going to tell you what is amazing is no, Christians aren't the only one that see. There are people that are having their blinders taken off. I find this very interesting. There's a lot of people that have been sitting in Christian churches. They've even been taught Bible prophecy, but they are saying now they don't want anything to do with it. In fact, I taught this to my church this morning. Now they don't want anything to do with it. They're saying, oh, that's just a bunch of hogwash. We don't want to hear about it anymore. So a lot of people who are part of the church, they're gone. They were taught the Bible. They don't want to hear anything of it. They don't want anything to do with it. But I'm finding people who never went to church, hated the church, maybe they're atheist or agnostic, they're asking questions like God is waking up other people. He's going out through the highways and byways to wake up other people. Okay, Kevin, I saw some more questions after that. I know they're coming in fast, but let's see. Question, where has the flu gone? That's an excellent question. Suddenly, it disappeared. Here's another question. This is from Anthony. Have you heard of the Pope's Laudato Si Action Platform? Yes, I've taught on that. I even have some quotes on that. He even has a 7-year plan, a 7-year action plan. Quite interesting. Tell you what, I think I should talk about that again. It's been a while since I've covered that. I think I will again. Here's another question from Jules. If I believe, where'd it go? I know it was here. Jules, there it is. If I believe that God will gather my children from the east and from the west and pray over it, will they be saved? I'm not sure exactly what that question means when I see the east and the west. That's a, hey, thank you, Jason, by the way, for your super chat. Appreciate that very much. I also saw Matt on there and Pookie on there. Thank you for your super chats. Really appreciate that. So here's the thing with the east and the west. The Bible tells us that God casts our sins as far as the east is from the west. So I don't think that's what you're referring to. Thank you, Sal, for your super chat also. In fact, I'm going to get to your question in just a second. But with the East or West and your children, listen, pray over your children that they might be saved, that they might know the Lord Jesus Christ. When God talks about gathering the children at the end days, he's talking about the end of the tribulation period. He's going to be gathering the wheat and the chaff. He's going to be gathering the sheep and the goats. The sheep are going to populate the planet. The goats are going to be judged. The sheep and goat nation judgment. We also have the Jews that are being gathered from the four corners of the earth, the north, south, east, and west. So as far as your children, pray over them. Okay, Sal, here's your question. Do you think what's going on in Afghanistan now is a preview of the tribulation? American troops leave, Taliban takes power, it starts Sharia, persecution of Christians and opponents. I've had that question a few different times earlier today, by the way. And so when I look at that, do I believe it's a preview of Armageddon? Maybe a preview in the sense of just the war and the horrific things that are taking place. People have their heads cut off. They're actually doing that. I read a report just yesterday, an entire church was eliminated. They were decapitated. They're beheaded. So we know that during the tribulation period, that's going to be one of the ways that people are going to be dying that do not receive the mark of the beast and refuse to reject the Lord Jesus Christ. Those who become believers during the tribulation period. So in that sense, yes, in fact, we're becoming desensitized to it. Listen, to have your head cut off and see what the Taliban doing strikes terror in people. So the Antichrist is going to use terror. He's going to be saying, if you don't submit, then this is what's going to happen to you. Off with your head. So in that sense, yes. However, I will say this, if you're also asking if perhaps you have Sharia law in there, is it going to be an Islamic Antichrist? I don't believe so. I've talked about this before. I believe that the Bible's clear. Daniel chapter 9 gives us the ethnicity of the Antichrist. He's going to come from the people who destroyed the city. That'd be out of the revived Roman Empire. So I think he's going to be out of the European territory. Hence, we see the rise of the EU army. Already talked about that tonight. So that's what's going to happen. But they will use that terror, and what the Taliban is doing, that type of thing, is going to be used. And people are hearing about it. You're going to hear more and more about this terror that's happening. Let's see. Bree, question. I missed it. Anthony, thank you for the super chat. I missed Bree's question. Let me see if I can come up. What is the parable of the talents and means? Mean. What is the difference? Listen, we'll get to that one another time. It doesn't really fit right where we are right now. It's a good question. That's something I would rather deal with on a Sunday morning. It is a good question, but let me say this when it comes to your talents, whatever it is that the Lord Jesus Christ has given you, you have the 10, you have the 5, you have the 1. Listen, whatever it is the Lord's given you to use, you use for his kingdom. You never say, I want to bury it. I'm not going to use my talent for the kingdom of Christ and so forth. I saw a few more questions go by. Their question is from Holy Spirit in me. Where'd it go? It just disappeared. Man, these are coming by so fast. Well, it was on there somewhere. If you can hit, there it is. Will Afghanistan be a part of the Gog-Magog war? A great question. Before I answer that, thank you, Sally, for your super chat. I'll get to your question. Oh, your question's fantastic, too. Okay, will Afghanistan be part of the Gog-Magog war? If you can hold it here for a minute, Kevin, so I can get to Sally's question also. My friend Nathan Jones from Christ in Prophecy Ministries in Lamb and Lion, he says that the area of Afghanistan is part of the landmass that's connected with the Ezekiel chapter 38 war. I don't know about that. There's arguments for it and arguments against it. But what we do see happening, and this is more significant to me than that, what we do see happening is Putin is going to take over. The Taliban has said, listen, we're going to give China all of our minerals out of Afghanistan. We're making deals with China. Listen, Russia's not going to put up with that. Russia's not going to say, okay, China, you can have that. Listen, all of these leaders are megalomaniacs. They want to be the one in charge. They're not going to give up their territory to anybody. Listen, this is what's going to happen. Russia is going to be the king over there. And China is not. I know China's not going to be the superpower that people are saying it's going to be. It's going to be this 200 million man army. In fact, I should deal with that one next week. I don't have enough time to deal with it tonight. I should deal with that one next week. Why do I say, because I get this question a lot, why do I say that China is not the 200 million man army of the book of Revelation? I'll show you why. And If you believe China is the 200 million man army, stay with me. Kevin, remind me next week, or Matthew, remind me next week to deal with the Chinese 200 million man army. I'll show you why, and I believe that you'll see what I see, and you'll go, wow, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Sally, here's your question. Do you think that the fallen angels will return to earth during the tribulation period? Bada boom, bada bing. Yes, I do believe that they will. The Bible tells us, I believe it's in the book of Jude, that these demons are going to be, they're reserved for judgment in the last days. And then check this out, Revelation chapter 9, verse 13. Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who has the trumpet, release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the four angels who have been prepared for the hour, day, and month, and year were released to kill a third of mankind. Now the number of the army of the horsemen released by the four angels apparently was 200 million. So it seems to me like that's a demonic thing. I'll get to that. But I want you to check out this. In Revelation chapter 9, verse 1, the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven to earth. To him who was given the key to the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion. People are going to seek to die, but they will not be able to die. So what do we have here? We have out of the bottomless pit, these locust creatures, these are demons, are let out. I believe these are the same fallen angels that are there. I believe it's from the book of Jude that they are reserved, the Bible tells us, for the day of judgment. Thank you, Learner, Super Chat. Here's your question. What do you say to those who believe Christians are going through the Great Tribulation? Listen, I have a lot of people that tell me we are going through the Great Tribulation. I am not, I don't believe that we are. I believe there's a lot of things that we have not seen take place yet that we need to see. Personally, I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, but I was at a conversation with one of my friends recently who does not. I said, okay, let's say, thank you, Curtis, for your super chat, by the way, and I'll get to your question in a minute too. But Talise, thank you for your super chat also. Carrie, also, thank you. Listen, so I look at these things, and are we in the Great Tribulation? Folks, we're not. There's a lot of things that need to transpire. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, we have not written those yet, okay? Apart from the four horsemen of the apocalypse, because no doubt somebody's going to ask me, will we be here for the four horsemen of the apocalypse, all right? So let's just pretend like we would be here for the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Let's just pretend like we would. But again, I said pretend. Well, what do you still have to see? There's going to be the martyrs of the fifth seal. But then what happens after the martyrs of the fifth seal? You have the sixth seal. That is when you have the stars fall from the sky like figs falling from a tree late in season that just plummet the earth. The word for stars there gives us, it comes from a Greek word aster. We give it our English word asteroid. So it can apply to an asteroid. It can apply to what are those other things? Meteorites, as they come and they hit the earth also. But it says they're going to fall from the sky like figs falling from a tree late in season. They're going to be plummeting the earth. The people are going to cry out to the rocks to fall on them, and they are going to know that the wrath of the Lamb has come. We have not seen that. We haven't seen the earthquake that's described there yet. We haven't seen any of those things. We haven't seen the 144,000 that are sealed yet. We haven't seen any of the trumpet judgments yet. We haven't seen any of those events take place yet. So no, I do not believe we are in the tribulation period. Again, I am a pre-trib believer. I believe we're going to be raptured before the tribulation begins. The tribulation begins at the execution of the confirmation of the 70th week, the covenant of the 70th week of Daniel. That hasn't happened yet either. So I know we're not in the Great Tribulation yet. However, we're getting close. And I would agree with my friends there. We folks are getting close. Remember, it's the 70th week of Daniel. the final 7-year period when God is redeeming the Jews. He's turning his attention to the Jews, which also makes me believe this is why we are seeing Israel isolated. We're watching all of these things take place. So I'm looking at it and going, wow, we live in amazing days. But these things haven't happened yet. So we're not in the tribulation period yet. Don't lose heart. Listen, Jesus is going to call us home. By the way, Rhonda, I see your Yom Kippur 22 or 23. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I just want to take this out for a second. Then I'm going to get to Mary's question about Damascus being destroyed. Okay, there's a lot of people right now that are saying, listen, Rosh Hashanah begins, I think it's tomorrow, so, and then we have the Feast of Trumpets, you have Yom Kippur, you have the Feast of Tabernacles. All the fall feasts are taking place. And people say, listen, Rosh Hashanah, the rapture is going to be here within the next couple of days. Is it? Listen, I don't know when the rapture is going to happen. Listen, I think I'm going to, okay, if the rapture, okay, let me just say this. I'm not into predictions. I'm ready to be here next Sunday night, though, to preach. I would love to be raptured before we're done here right now. I would love to be raptured tomorrow or Tuesday. Woo, that would be awesome. But I'm preparing to be here next Sunday night to continue ministering until Jesus comes, until Jesus calls us home. I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm excited about it. I see everything fast forwarding to the last days. Mary, your question, will we see Damascus being destroyed? Mary, that's a really good question. I'm thinking we may see Damascus be destroyed. I want to get to Arturo's question also, Kevin. I see that. But let me deal with this one first of all with, will we see Damascus destroyed? So Isaiah chapter 17 talks about Damascus. In the evening, Damascus is there. In the morning, Damascus has been wiped out, presumably by the Israeli Defense Force. They eliminate Damascus. One way or another, Israel takes out the city of Damascus like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's going to be completely eliminated. Listen, Damascus looks really bad right now. It's the capital of Syria. It looks really bad. It has not yet been eliminated the way that the Bible describes in Isaiah chapter 17. I believe the destruction of Damascus will come before the Ezekiel chapter 38, chapter 39 war. I believe it's going to take place before then. Will it be something we could see? Listen, it could be. We know it's a last days event. I believe it's a last days event, I should say. So I look at that and think we could see it. It might happen after the rapture. It could happen before the rapture. Now imagine this. If you're already wondering if we're in the tribulation period, and all of a sudden you see the destruction of Damascus, you might be thinking, that's it. I knew we were in the tribulation period. Not so fast. Again, the tribulation begins at the confirming of the covenant of the 70th week of Daniel. So that hasn't happened yet, and it's a 7-year covenant. 7 years. God gives us specifics so that we can know. Okay, Arturo, question. Is the word I can't say, the coronavirus shot, part of the deaths that happened in Revelation chapter 4 seals? I'll say this. I believe, I'm not even allowed to comment on it. What am I thinking? I know I'm going to, listen, we have our own server coming. I'll be able to comment more pretty soon on that. Okay, so sorry about that. I thought I was going to be able to answer it. I'm going to get censored if I do. Okay, Jason Carroll, thank you for your super chat. Is the Jewish calendar off by a month? So Feast of Trumpets is October 7th-ish. That's what some people have informed me of the other day. My Israeli friends have been informing me, no, everything is right on target, everything is perfect. So the calendar is correct. So I don't know. You know, I have two different people telling me. I have some of my Jewish friends are saying it is off. Some of my Jewish friends are saying, no, everything is just fine. Tomorrow actually begins our Rosh Hashanah. Listen, thank you for all of your questions. Thank you, Talise, for your super chat. I think I got time for a couple more. Are there more questions on there? Okay. Oh, there are. Okay. I got time for a couple more. Let's see. Where are they? There's one. There it is. This is from Lita. Will there come a time to flee? Well, flee from what? I mean, the one article I read about climate change and the threats with drought and water sounds like people who live in California are going to want to be fleeing from California. Already people are fleeing from California trying to get to Texas. But I think what you're referring to is tribulation kind of events. Listen, you look at Afghanistan, look, the people are fleeing. Oh, everything is so unbelievable right now. I look at our own church. How much longer will I be able to continue to pastor a church with open doors in 2022 if we're not raptured by then? Or are we going to have to go to homes? Are we going to be hiding? I don't know, but I will tell you this much. I believe that we need to be prepared. We really need to be ready because the writing is on the wall. And if you have a Bible and you're paying attention like you guys are, you wouldn't be asking these questions. Then you can look at it and go, you know what? I just need to be ready for whatever it is. But I need to not be in fear. We fear the Lord, right? The fear of man brings a snare. When you look at the first century, sometimes they were fleeing. Sometimes hey man, we got to get out of here. They're out to kill us. So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that we need to be strong in the Lord, not by might, not by power, but by His Spirit, says the Lord. He will strengthen us. He's going to give us what to say when we need it to say, when we need the right words to say. He's going to give us the strength as we need the strength, and we're going to know. So you need to be paying attention. What you guys are, you wouldn't be watching this. You wouldn't be asking these questions. Amber says, more Rumble exclusives, Pastor. Yes. Many of you watch JD. JD is what a great brother is, and he's become such a good friend. Listen, send him a word of encouragement. I'm learning from JD and Brandon Holthouse, so we'll be doing their format soon. Starting, we'll be able to do some of our message fully on YouTube, some of them when I got to do the exclusives where I know it's going to be a problem. We have our own server coming next week, so we'll be able to do that. Pookie, your question. Just found out 6 planes of Americans and Afghans are being held hostage by Taliban for 2 days. Will their demands be met? Pookie, were you not paying attention? I had that in my message, but it was in the very beginning, though. So sorry about that. But will their demands be met? You know, the way that things go with, I'm going to get to Harpazo Man question in a second, if you can hold there, Kevin. The way that things are going, if the demands are on the United States government, who knows what we're going to give them. We give Iran billions of dollars. We've already given the Taliban all of our military equipment and millions of dollars. And apparently it sounds like the Biden administration has already agreed to give the Taliban even more money. So for me, yeah, it's a no-brainer. We're going to be, this is just terrible. It's just absolutely wicked what is happening. Absolutely wicked what's happening. Pastor, are all your children and wife saved? Yes, they are. I have 17 children and 3 wives. No, I'm just kidding. I probably shouldn't have said. Somebody's going to edit that out and say, this guy, look at him. No, I have 1 wife, 2 kids. Yes, they are. Praise the Lord. Question. Dispensationalism happens throughout the Word, and we see God uses seasons. Does church age have to I think it has to end. Yes, the Bible tells us, Romans chapter 11, verse 25, that the Apostle Paul writes, I do not want you to be ignorant of this. I'm only going to have one more question, and then I'll have to cut it out. Yes, oh, by the way, I'm referring to J.D. Frog for all of you who are asking. He's such a great brother. Okay, so with that, when I look at does the time of the church age have to end, it will end as we know it. We know this from Romans chapter 11, verse 25. The Bible says, the Apostle Paul writes, I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brethren, lest you be wise in your own eyes, lest you be puffed up. But blindness in part has happened to Israel until the time of the Gentiles is done. Then all Israel will be saved. We also know the harpazo is taught, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, the rapture is going to happen. So that'll be the end of the church age as we know it. It will end. The Bible does teach that. Yes, it does. However, will people be saved during the tribulation period? Absolutely. The Bible tells us every tribe, nation, tongue, or people will be saved. So thank you very much for your questions. And thank you again, Sally, also for your super chat. And appreciate all of these things. Man, that was a lot of questions. And it looks like I gotta sign out. Am I done? I'm gonna pass out.
So
Oh, hopeforourtimes.com. Thank you very much. Okay, guys. Hey, listen, God bless you guys. Thank you for all of your questions. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for being such a blessing. Give a shout out for those of you who said JD and Andy Woods are doing a conference together. Say hi to them from me. God bless you guys.